Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Well, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. I would like to introduce you to our guest. Thank you guys, the audience, for joining us tonight on Table Talk Thursday. Tonight, our guest is Marcela Howell, President and CEO of In Our Voice, National Black Women's Reproductive Justice. Again, good evening.
Good evening.
We are so excited to learn about the Black Reproductive Justice Policy Agenda. But first, can you explain to our audience what reproductive justice is?
Well, reproductive justice is a phrase that was coined in 1994 by 12 Black women who were meeting in Chicago. And it's a combination of reproductive health and justice, sort of social justice added together. And they came up with this phrase because they felt like the white women's pro-choice movement wasn't addressing issues that really looked at the lived experiences of Black women. So It's based on human rights and Black feminist theory. And it looks at the fact that women should have control over their own bodies, their lives, their work, their reproduction, basically that we all have a human right to make our own decisions about our own bodies. And
right. Oh, okay. Interesting. So can you please tell our audience why the Black RJ Policy Agenda was created?
Well, the Black Policy Agenda actually came out of looking at what was going on with COVID-19 last year and the sort of racial reckoning that happened around the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. And what we wanted to do was come up with a policy agenda for Congress that looked at policies through a reproductive justice lens. So we worked with 30 Black women's organizations and reproductive justice advocates to come up with this Black reproductive justice policy agenda. Looked at 25 different issues that impact the lived experiences of Black women and sort of puts it in the context of what reproductive justice is.
Okay. I know that Black women are 3 to 4 times likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, more than their counterpart, the white counterparts. So the policy addresses maternal health in the sexual and reproductive health section. Tell us more about what is covered in that section.
Well, what we know is that deaths for Black women from pregnancy-related conditions cut across economic levels, it cuts across educational levels, cuts across age levels. And there has never really been a full explanation of that. And so what we looked at was what kind of things could be impacting Black women's lives during their pregnancies. We know that for Black women in this country, one of the pieces that really impacts is racism. And what we live through every single day. So we're looking at solutions, and we pull together people who actually work on this on a daily basis. That what kind of policies do we want to recommend to Congress? And some of the policies are included in an act called the Momnibus Act, which covers a wide range of different issues that would impact on Black women's maternal health. And we wanted to make sure, again, that we were looking at all of these things, that they some of the impacts are just how doctors treat Black women when they come to hospitals, when they come into doctors' offices. Some of them have to do more with all the kinds of outside forces that impact your life, in your work experience, in your everyday life. And as I said, racism was one of that. The other thing is like over-policing, and the fact that Black communities, over-policing is a big issue. It also, what we looked at was things like heat, for instance. We know that Black communities, because a lot of Black communities have fewer trees, the heat index is like anywhere between up to 10 degrees hotter in a Black community than
Wow.
in a suburban community.
Mm-hmm.
And that impacts Black women when they are in their later stages of pregnancy. Heat is a big issue. And so we looked at that. We looked at the fact that a lot of Black neighborhoods are in areas where there is pollution and air is not good. We know that a lot of Black children, for instance, have asthma, but we also know that that impacts Black women when they are pregnant. So
Yeah.
we are looking at all those different kinds of conditions and saying that there needs to be systemic change.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just say Black women need to be treated better when they are, pregnant, but it also are systemic changes in terms of how they are viewed. Very often people view pain index, for instance, for Black pregnant people, that we have a higher threshold of pain.
Which is not true.
Is not true.
Right.
So there are all those kind of things. And when you look at the fact that you've got some fairly wealthy, well-known Black women who have had some problems with their pregnancies,
Yeah.
like Serena Williams, like Beyonce,
Mm-hmm.
you know this is not just about poor people. This is literally about the perceptions that the medical profession has of Black women.
Yeah, and I see that a lot of women are now speaking out about it. And I think that it's because of those people who have a higher visibility, who are also speaking on it, that women like myself are relating to that and able to speak on it as well. So all of the things that you list, I myself and I know a lot of other Black women have experienced the racism. I didn't realize the heat. And all of those things. I have asthma. My mom went through labor for 4 days, and they told her just you'll be fine, stuff like that. Yeah. So, but yeah, a lot of that stuff, a lot of those things that you mentioned is really important and really needs to be out there so other women can help advocate for themselves and other women in the Black community or women of color community.
And Black women have been advocating for this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It took those high profile women
Mm-hmm.
to raise the issue and make people pay attention. But even with them paying attention, we're still not getting some of the solutions.
Yeah.
It really does start all the way in when people first enter medical school, that they have to be taught how to treat patients that are not based on race.
Right.
And that's something that, that we have to also impart in medical schools, that there is a certain level of racism that gets taught automatically as well. It may be something that people aren't fully aware of, but it is there. It is, when doctors come in and talk to each other as if a Black woman's not sitting in front of them.
Right. And they don't really actually listen. They talk to you or at you. Yeah. The social justice, community justice and safety section of the policy agenda addresses many issues, including voting rights, police rights, economic justice, environmental justice, and aging. Can you explain the importance of those issues?
Well, one of the things when we looked at those is we know that Black women do not live siloed lives.
Mm-hmm.
All of these issues impact how you live your life. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was really to emphasize the sort of intersectional part of what our lives are about. So that if you're looking for housing, for instance, you've got to have a decent job. So you've got to get decent pay. We know that Black women make 62 cents for every dollar that a white man makes. Mm-hmm. And that in some states, like in the South, it's even worse. It goes down to like 48 cents.
Wow.
What that means is that Black women have to work longer, anywhere into their 80s, in order to make the amount of money that a white man makes when he retires at 65. Mm-hmm. That's what pay inequity does to us. And so that we wanted to look at that. We wanted to look at issues that are around as I said before, over policing in our communities, that raises the level of stress that we have and that our children have. We wanted to look at, as I said, housing, environmental issues,
Right.
again, that I mentioned earlier in relationship to maternal health. But we wanted to look at all of those things. And then, of course, there's voting rights right now, where we've got all of these states passing these laws to
restricting
prevent
us. Yeah.
Black people from voting. And we know that voting is something that, our ancestors died for, to try and ensure that we had the right to vote. Black women fought just as hard as white women did to get suffrage passed.
Right.
And yet the 19th Amendment gets passed. And one of the deals that was made was with Southern legislators that they could then put in state laws that would prevent those Black women from voting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 40-something years until the Voting Rights Act was passed that Black women actually had the freedom to go out and register to vote and participate in an electoral system. And now we're seeing that getting turned back by these horrible Jim Crow laws that are being passed in state legislatures. And so we want to make sure that people see how all of these things connect.
Yeah.
That they're oppressive laws that basically impact on how Black women live their lives and how their families live. And our organization, along with all the organizations to help to work on the policy agenda, are basically the backbone of making sure that Black women maintain the strides that they've made and that we fight back against these oppressive laws.
And it seems like Black women for ages and for years have been in the forefront of fighting all of these policies, all of these things, and we never tire of doing it. It's just that when is it going to end? And I don't know if we see it end near. I mean, it's like we're reverting back to the years of old.
I think what we have to do is not just vote. We need to make sure that Black women are running.
Yeah.
In every position. We can't just rely on on Congress. We have to rely also on state legislative races. We have to look at governor seats. We need to look at the mayor's offices.
Right.
In cities.
Local. Mm-hmm.
Or that we are supporting Black women to run in all of these positions. Because the one thing we know is that we can actually elect these women to office. We've been electing white men to office for years, for decades. And now we are more and more turning our attention on making sure that Black women are getting elected into these offices so that the kind of legislation that we need to really make sure that our communities are thriving will be passed.
So recently you put out a statement in regards to the Department of Justice, them filing a lawsuit against the state of Texas and their ban against abortion after 6 weeks.
Right.
Can you speak to that? How and will it work? What do we need to do? I know that just filing a lawsuit is not going to help. What else can we do to help fight this?
Well, the first thing everybody in Texas needs to know is that this law is unconstitutional.
It is.
Under Roe v. Wade.
It is.
Roe v. Wade is still the law of the
live and well. Right.
But what it has done is it has turned the anti-abortion movement into vigilantes.
Yeah.
And saying that they can now go after your sister if your sister just talks to you about whether or not you're going to have an abortion. Yeah. Because if you talk to your sister, your aunt, anyone in your family, and they support you in what you want to do, a lawsuit can be filed against us, a civil lawsuit that you can lose money on. And part of this law basically is designed to make sure that people are afraid to do certain things.
Okay.
They're afraid to help women go to different states. They're afraid to give them a ride across state lines. They're afraid to counsel them to, to go in and find out if they're pregnant before the 6 weeks pass. The reason we were so pleased that the Department of Justice decided to file a lawsuit against the state of Texas is because the Supreme Court that is now has this conservative, ultra-conservative majority chose not to follow precedent, not to follow the laws that they had already passed on, and said that this law needs to have an injunction against it, an emergency injunction.
Mm-hmm.
The Supreme Court chose not to do that, and therefore the law was enacted into effect on September 1st. So the Department of Justice is now filing against it as an unconstitutional law. And the Department of Justice will also support people going into clinics. The clinics themselves, there are laws that they can enforce, federal laws like the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, which is called FACE. Mm-hmm. They support those laws to keep people from blocking the entrances to clinics. Those are the kind of things that this Department of Justice should be doing. And it's not enough. It really isn't. What we now need is Congress to act as well. Congress can actually pass laws that will codify Roe v. Wade into law, and they should do that.
Do you think that that's what is going to happen? Do you think Congress is going to get involved?
Well, I think that Congress has the ability. They have been elected into office by Black women and Latinas and API women. That's how they got into power right now last year. And they can indeed enact this law.
Yes.
It's the Women's Health Protection Act. They can also enact a new Voting Rights Act that will also put into place the kind of things that the Supreme Court removed out of the Voting Rights Act just a few years ago. But in order to do that, they have to get rid of the filibuster in the Senate. Yeah. And we all know that the filibuster is a Jim Crow remnant where Southern senators use to stop civil rights legislation from going. Yeah. And it is a remnant that needs to be removed. It is a racist procedure in the Senate, and it needs to be removed.
It's so many factors just to get the rights that we deserve.
Exactly.
Just so many things, like
country. And it is just, and you kind of get tired of it.
You do. It's daunting and weary. It's like
of it.
And it's not just, it's just racism, sexism, just all of these rights that we've been fighting for a long time. And like you said, we just get tired, but we don't stop.
Right. And at some point, you just want to rest.
You just want to rest. Yeah.
You can't. And that's the reality. You can't. And we see, younger generations taking up this fight. Mm-hmm. And kind of part of you want to say, I really didn't want my children and my grandchildren to have to do this too. Yeah. And yet here we are. And we've got, people who are in their 20s now having to take up the same fight that we've been fighting all this time.
For years. Mm-hmm.
And but that's where we are. And it's only until we exercise that right to vote and remove these racist legislators from their positions and put in laws that actually understand and clearly say that everyone in this country should have the right to vote, should have the right to be in charge of their own bodies, should have the right to live in good neighborhoods and get good city services. All of that is what we need to have happen. But it does mean that we have to exercise that right to vote to get people out of office.
And that was my next question. How can our audience get involved? And it's voting. Is there anything else that we can do?
You can get involved with Black RJ organizations in your state, in your community. Help them when they are going out and knocking on doors, trying to register people, trying to turn them out to vote. You can make sure that you're registered to vote. That's the other big piece that is happening in some of these states, is that people are being purged from the voting rolls for no other reason that they live in a zip code that is predominantly where Black, and they are being purged from the voter rolls. So before every single election, you need to check to make sure you're still registered to vote. Yeah. Don't just assume you are because you voted in the last election. Check. Go online and check and make sure you're still registered to vote. And, you know, and when they have early voting, go out and do early voting so that you're around during on election day to go and knock on doors and get people out there to vote.
How can folks read the full Black RJ policy agenda?
That's an easy one. They can go on our website. It's www.blackrj.org. And it's right on the homepage.
It's right there.
Click on that homepage. You'll see. It's page.
It's pretty easy. Can members of the audience, where can members of the audience find you on social media?
Well, you can go on at Black Women's RJ. That's our Twitter handle. On our Facebook, you can just put in our name and it'll pop up.
In our voice, right?
Yes, in our own voice.
In our own voice.
Yeah, but in our own voice, you have to. I think you have to put in the whole name because there's, in our own
Facebook,
voice, something else, and
right.
And we also have an Instagram account. If you go on our website, you will see all the icons. Right?
Okay.
And you can just click on them and go right into our Twitter account, our Instagram, our Facebook. And we would enjoy having people there and commenting on our various social media platforms. I
was so happy that we got to have you on tonight. I researched, I read, I was very interested in what you guys are doing, and I might volunteer myself. I really do. This is really important. And I have a daughter. I have, close friends and family that are younger than I am. And I think that a lot of the information and a lot of things that you're doing resonates with them. And I think they need to be connected to it.
And I should add that we actually we work with 8 Black women's reproductive justice organizations as partners.
Okay. Oh, okay.
In California is Black Women for Wellness. And there's Black Women's Health Imperative, which is a national organization. New Voices for Reproductive Justice in Ohio and in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. Sister Love in Georgia. Spark Reproductive Justice Agenda is in Georgia as well. Sister Reach is in Tennessee. The Aphia Center in Texas, right in Dallas.
Okay, Texas.
And Women with a Vision in Louisiana, in New Orleans. So those are partner organizations that we work with. There are a wide variety of other organizations that we worked with on this Black RJ policy agenda that are listed in the policy agenda. If you see any of those organizations, you can get in touch with them.
Okay.
And we're still working together. We're going to be working on this policy agenda throughout next year, and then we will go back into it and revise it for the next Congress, because Congress gets elected here. Mm-hmm. So we're going to revise what we see as things that we need to add, things that we have been able to pass, and we'll put out a second edition of the policy agenda.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us tonight. We look forward to hearing more about the policy agenda, and we are here with you fighting.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. You have a great evening.
You too.
Thank you, audience. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.